Hello YouTube! Today I'll be upgrading the front brakes on my Ford Capri. There's been quite a lot of progress on the Capri in the last month or so. I've got the engine running really well, it's making some really good power. But what that has shown up is the brakes are just terrible. They're pretty much worn out, and the guy who helped me with the engine said I need to replace them and really upgrade them now because the engine's making such good power. So I've gone all in and I've brought a complete brake upgrade kit. What the kit comes with is two upgraded calipers from Hi Spec. They're 4-pot calipers. They should give a lot of good grip. Two bigger discs. These are two 60mm discs because I've only got 13-inch wheels. If you've got 15-inch wheels, you can and should go for bigger discs, but I prefer the look of the smaller wheels, so I've gone for these. The kit comes with braided hoses from Hi Spec as well. You need these specific hoses for this kit because the caliper mounts in a slightly different way. And of course, a set of brake pads. And along with this is a load of bolts, fastenings and boring stuff which you don't really want to see. So quick summary then of why I've gone for this kit, because there's other versions available. You can go for wheel wood, or you can go for calipers off different cars or stuff from the scrapyard, etc. Basically I've been getting a lot of my Capri stuff from a company called Tickover, and they are pretty much the UK specialists in Capris now, and they highly recommend this kit because of how well it fits. As they say, there's not many issues with it and it's a very good kit, so I've gone with their expert advice and bought this one. The only difference is though, as standard, the kit comes with EBC brake pads. My mechanic though is also a racer. He highly recommends the Mintex ones. They are quite a lot more expensive. These were nearly £80 for the set, whereas the EBC ones were about a third of that price. But he does rate them very highly, and so I've gone with his advice there and gone for the decent brake pads for some good stopping power. So then, let's head outside and fit the kit. So step one, let's get rid of this front wheel. And with that out of the way, we can see the old disc, which actually isn't in too bad condition, but it is a bit small. The old copper brake pipe, which goes around the back, joins what was a braided hose, and then goes to the inner wing. And the worst offender though, the old caliper, which is well past its best, and that's the main reason that I'm upgrading the brakes now. The first thing I'm going to do, put a tray underneath to collect any spilt brake fluid. So the first thing I've done is undo the copper brake pipe with an 11mm spanner. Because I'm going to be throwing it away anyway, I've just bent it up the way to try and stop too much fluid coming out. With many of these brake components, they're going straight in the bin, so I'm not going to be too delicate with them. The next thing I've done is I've put a large torque wrench. You should really use a breaker bar, but torque wrench turned right up seems to do the same job, with a 19mm socket on the end on the big bolt on the back of the caliper there. I've had to bend a lock tab out the way to get it on, but I believe this is the main bolts which hold the caliper onto the rest of the mounting. At the same time, I've removed the two bars that hold the pads in, just for the sake of it really, to make it a bit easier to slip the caliper off at the end. The bars, as with all disc brake pads, just go through the two holes and hold the pads in place there. With the two big bolts removed and the brake line disconnected, there should be nothing holding the caliper on, so let's see if it falls off. Yep, that did the trick. Underneath of which we have the split pin and the nut retainer, so remove both of those. And when you've done that, you can pull off the nut that holds the stub axle on. So as you may be able to tell by the rusty state of the disc, night has been and gone, and the hub won't come off. This bearing is supposed to just pretty much fall out, and then the hub's supposed to come off easily. But I've been pulling and bashing the thing, and it won't come off at all. I've ordered some gear pullers which might help. You can also use slide hammer if appropriate, but as I'm throwing this disc away afterwards anyway, I'm going to try bashing the back of it one more time, see if that does the job. Finally managed to remove the thing, mostly by beating the back of the disc with my large hammer and using the pullers on the final bit of it. It's just a bit stubborn. Normally it should come off a lot easier than that. Next step is to remove this dust guard and throw it away because it's not needed with these discs. It's fairly straightforward. There's one small bolt here and there's 2 bolts on the back. Each bolt's different, of course, it wouldn't be that straightforward. One of them has a split pin on as well, so that will need to be replaced after the job's done. This might also be a good opportunity to scrape off some of the brake dust and rust and give it a bit of a coat of paint as well. Dust shield now removed. Again, it was more hard than I thought it was going to be because everything's so rusted solid really. The 2 bolts on the bottom with the pins through the end of them, they're 15mm on the front, 14mm on the back on the nuts, if that's of any use to you. I'm going to try putting some paint on this suspension area just to try and stop it rusting a bit more. Something I've found, because my suspension's slightly upgraded, I've got gas shocks on mine instead of the standard ones, is that the discs, as I've tried on the other side, don't quite fit. There's a tiny little clash with the bottom of the suspension there, and it almost touches the outside of this mount here. So what I've had to do is take an angle grinder and just gently nibble away the bottom lip here. You only need to take off 1mm or 2 and maybe chamfer the edge around here just to make sure it doesn't clash. I assume this isn't a problem on the standard suspension because otherwise it would have been mentioned. That's something I'm going to do next. Now to remove the old brake disc. It's just held in place with these 4 bolts here, which are locked down with these tabs which you'll need to prise off. To make it easier, I've put it back into the wheel, which means the bolts will knock against the holes, give you something to push against when you're trying to undo the bolts. And with those bolts removed, the old disc should simply pull off, lift away from the hub, and then you go. Now before you reinstall it, you probably want to clean the whole hub up as much as you can, get rid of all this old brake dust. Most important bit is these mating surfaces here, you need to get absolutely spotlessly clean. So you want to sand it, wire brush it, get some brake cleaner on it, get these bits as clean and as spotless as possible. So when the new disc goes on, it's absolutely flat. This is very important because even a slight bit of rust could offset it a bit and give you real problems with the braking later on. This kit comes with a replacement steel braided brake hose, which replaces this copper pipe and the original hose, which, as you can see, mine was steel braided anyway. I'm now going to remove these 2 just to get them out of the way, starting with the one on the inner wing. To do that, you need to slacken off the nut on the other side, which is in the wing, and you need extra long spaghetti arms to be able to also hold this one, so that you can hold them together and undo the 2. After that, I'll remove it from the bottom here, and then I'll remove the copper pipe and chuck the 2 of them away. That's a nasty old line removed. Now to replace it with this nice new all-in-one steel braided and plastic coated version. So that's the brake line replaced. Goes all the way direct to the caliper, which I've attached to stop it leaking anymore. I'm now going to put the caliper up out of the way so I can get back to work on the main brakes and the disc. I've now ground the bottom half of the suspension arm a little bit and chamfered the outside of this mount here. So now I've mounted everything back up and lined it up and put the caliper on. If you want to see how to put the wheel hub back on and do the bearing, etc., there's other videos on YouTube which can explain it better than me, so I'll leave it to them. One point to note is, with this Hi Spec kit though, you will need a very specific tool, which is a 9mm hex key. You probably won't have one of these because they're pretty uncommon. I got mine for about £4 off Amazon. So that'll put the 2 bolts in the back of the caliper back on after you've used the spring washers and the spacers and a bit of a thread lock to stop them coming undone. I'll just show you the setup here in case it's of use to you. That's a bit dark, it's hard to see and badly focused, so I apologise for that, but basically it is the bolt there, then a spring washer, a collet inside, a sleeve inside, and a spacer there between the back of the caliper and the mounting point. Of course, torque that up to the correct settings that you find in the manual. I'm now going to crack off the 2 bleed nipples and let gravity drain the fluid through the system, and then it should be ready to put the pads in, mount the wheels and go for a bit of a test drive. Now that that's done, just pull back the 2 pins on the side of the caliper and slot in your brake pads into the slot there between the caliper and the disc. And that, folks, is where I'm going to stop with this guide. Hope you found it fairly useful. I'll do a follow-up with how the brakes actually perform, but I expect they'll be a million miles better than the old ones. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.